Good day, everyone, and thank you for attending to today's meeting for the February 22nd MACC Policy Board meeting. We'll go ahead and go ahead with roll call. Please be sure, because this meeting is being conducted remotely, we ask that you please provide your specific location with state, county, city, township that you are joining this meeting at. So, Judy, if you want to go ahead, please.
Yep. Hannes?
Yes, Hannes says State of Michigan and Park Township.
Okay. Pankaj? I did not see him. Okay. Terry Nienhuis?
Yeah, here, again, State of Michigan, northwest corner of Holland Charter Township.
Okay. Howard Bauman Jr.? Not here. Joe Bauman?
Here, Holland Township, Michigan.
Tom Bird?
Here at Holland Township as well.
Nathan Box?
Nathan Box attending virtually from beautiful Holland, Michigan.
Okay. Ken DeWeird?
Fillmore Township, Allegan County, Michigan.
Okay. Linda Howell?
Good afternoon, Laketown Township, Allegan County, Michigan.
Jim Gerard?
Michigan, here in Park Township.
John Kleinaxel?
Fillmore Township.
Okay. Kevin Kleinstra?
I am here and feeling the zeal in Zeeland, Michigan.
Don Mayo?
I had to beat Nathan out.
Okay. Don Mayo?
Hi, I'm in Conway Township, Livingston County.
Okay. Tom Unk? I don't believe he's here. Jim Story?
Here, City of Holland, Allegan County.
Russ Tesla?
Here in Holland.
Okay. Todd Walters?
Holland Township, Michigan.
Okay. Tyler Kent of the MACC?
Holland Township, Michigan.
Kelly Goward?
I'm here in Georgetown Township, Michigan.
Judy Vischer, Holland Township, Michigan. Jim Kamiya?
Yes, here from Jamestown Township, Michigan.
Okay. Tyler Kent of MDOT?
Hi, everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. Tyler Kent, MDOT Transportation Planning. I'm out of Lowell, Michigan, Kent County. Thank you.
Okay. And Doug Breedeveld?
Doug Breedeveld, I'm the auditor. I'm in Kent County, Michigan, in the city of Grand Rapids.
Okay. Chris Brown?
Chris Brown, the accounting work for the MACC. I am in Plainfield Township.
Okay. Did we miss anyone? Anyone whose name I did not call? All right, I think we're good.
Thank you, Judy. In front of you, you have a copy of the January 4th meeting minutes. I hope everyone has had a chance to review those. If there are any amendments, please let us know. And if not, motion to approve those minutes.
Move to approve. Nathan Box.
Okay.
Support by Howell.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, the motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda are the public comment portion of the meeting. Does anyone have any comments that they'd like to make? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comments. Next on the agenda is a presentation for the 2020 audit. Doug Verveld of Verveld and Hafner LLC is here to do a quick presentation on that. Doug?
All right, thank you. Tyler and I worked on my last name, but it's Doug Breedeveld. I tried to get him there. Breedeveld Hafner, thank you for the time today. Just to briefly go over your audit report. We were out last month at some point, a couple months ago, and we got it wrapped up last month. So here to just present the findings and go over through the opinion. If you have your booklet in front of you or virtually, the audit opinion is on the bottom of page 1. And it says, in our opinion, the financial statements present fairly the financial position of MACC. So that's good. That's what you hope to get. It's a clean audit. It's what you want when you have an audit done. The next section of the booklet itself is pages 3 through 6. This is management's discussion and analysis. The highlights on the top of page 3 are the important things to read through for you. Just tells that you've facilitated 14 million in funding for various state and local roadway projects, and the work with the farmers and the green community events and that kind of thing that were done during the year. So that's all positive things. And then to get into the actual numbers in the audit report, if you want to, Kelly, if you want to flip to the first slide. There you go. Thank you. The first 3 slides here are, if you follow along in your books, it's pages 7 through 9, but this is right on the bottom of page 7. So this is just a picture of the unrestricted net position, and this encompasses all of the activity, the governmental activities of the MACC. It's everything all combined together. So you can see the invested in capital, the blue line is going downward slightly, and that represents the depreciation on the building. That is primarily made up of the MACC holding company, and I'll take a quick look at that with you later in just a second. And then the unrestricted, you can see that's positive. That means you've had gains over the last several years. This year there was a 66,000 in net income, so that continues to trend up, and that's good. That's positive. The next slide, Kelly. This is just a picture of expenses compared to revenues for each of the transportation and watershed. The transportation revenue bar there, the gold bar, does include the dues for transportation. And you can see the revenues exceed the expenses, and on the watershed it's the opposite, and that has been the case for several years. I'll go over that a little bit more too, but expenses have exceeded revenues for the last several years there, and again this year. And go to the next slide, Kelly. This gives you more of a picture of a 5-year trend of the grants and the dues. So you can see the grants this year dropped quite a bit. A lot of that has to do with COVID and just the amount of activity that could happen with grant activity and with what the transportation was doing. But transportation grants were down about 68,000. Watershed grants were down about 73,000. And again, those are closely related to the activity that can occur. You can see the watershed dues there. It had been steady for 4 years, and this year it took a plan to jump, an increase in the dues that was planned and assessed. And then transportation dues has remained steady for the last 4 or 5 years there with no significant change. Go ahead, Kelly. These last 2 slides, these are more the fund basis financial statements. I fixed my current slide, but the yellow, there should be a little yellow graphic there that's local revenues. So first, the transportation grants, you can see it had a big jump in 2018 when there was a lot of work done, and then from 2019 to 20, it dropped a little bit. Watershed grants, like I just mentioned, dropped a little bit. The yellow bar is the local revenue. That encompasses both your dues for both of the programs, as well as other local grants, such as community enhancement. So you would expect to see that go up a little bit because of the increase in watershed dues, but it's actually slightly down, and that's because last year there was quite a bit of that community enhancement money that was included in here. So I didn't get that broken out separately, which probably would have been a little bit better graphic for you. And then the next one, Kelly. This is the fund balances of each of the transportation and watershed funds. You can see transportation has maintained a increasing, and that was even after the transfers to watershed. Watershed is the gold line there, and you can see for the last 4 years it's been at 0. And the red line there represents the annual transfers made from transportation to the watershed to keep the watershed at 0. Otherwise, it would have a deficit fund balance and would have to be reported to the state and that kind of thing. So we've done it this way, and you can see the individual amounts there by year that have been transferred over to the watershed to keep it whole, so to speak. And the total there of those four amounts is 193,000 over the last 4 years. So that's just something to be aware of. At some point, we're going to have to try to find a way to make the watershed be able to support itself without transferring money over from transportation, the transportation fund. And then I don't have a graph. That's the end of the graph or the pictures, but they're in the audit booklet itself. One thing I didn't do a graph on, but on page 14, if you have it, this is the MACC holding company. And I just wanted to point out that, you know, the building is in this holding company, the building itself that the MACC is in, the offices. And then there's cash in that fund of about 159,000. And that is equal to the unrestricted net position. So each year, rent of $1,000 a month in rent is paid over to MACC Holding by transportation, and that accumulates as long as expenses don't exceed that. But so there is money available there, just to point out to you for, you know, building renovations in the future and that kind of thing. And then just a couple of footnotes I wanted to mention. The footnotes are in the body of the financial statements as well. On page 21 or 22 at the top of it, this is where we would disclose any over expenditures of budget or other statutory violations, and there are none reported, so that's good. And then we also did do, I wanted to point out on page 23, note number 8, there was a prior period adjustment made for the year, and that was to last year the Community Enhancement Fund was brand new, and there was some confusion on how to account for it, but that's all straightened out there now, and there was a prior period adjustment done to accommodate that. And then by way of, in addition to the audit report, we issued a management letter. That's a little 2-page letter. It's primarily canned information that just describes the audit and the process. And on the second page, there's just a couple of items to mention to the board. One is the watershed, which I just mentioned, with the accumulating or the several years worth of deficits there. And the other item is the budget. The watershed budget continues to be in a deficit position, or it's at 0, but it continues to be budgeted with a deficit, and the state law does not allow for that. So just to make you aware of that, that we shouldn't adopt a budget with a deficit plan in it. So if there's any questions, that's all I had to report. If there's other items you noted in the statements or have any other questions, I'd certainly be happy to address those. Or we can make Chris address them.
Well, thank you, Doug. Appreciate your time and effort and sitting down, going through the budget with myself and with the policy board. We greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me.
And thanks, Chris. Thanks for attendance today.
Oh, you're welcome. No problem.
All righty. Next on the agenda, environmental program. Kelly?
Okay, let me get my screen shared again here. Okay, so the first thing we wanted to discuss is a proposal. I'm trying to get to my memo. Here we go. So I did summarize this in a memo. We're looking at potentially contracting some technical services with some outside organizations. And this is primarily due to the recent staffing changes with Rob's departure and then now Mara's. Both of them had time written into the 3 existing grants that we have. Rob only had time, or the GLC grant only has time for Rob. Mara was not part of that. But so there's tasks in those grants that I was anticipating them working on, and certainly not something I can handle all by myself. Plus, there were some additional tasks that we were anticipating both of them doing over the next year or so to help with the update of the watershed management plan. And we've got some other grants next that I'll talk about in relation to those. And so in kind of exploring our options, you know, certainly ODC Network is a big partner with us, especially with Project Clarity. And I mean, we are working together on a lot of these things, but in terms of having capacity to pick up some of these extra tasks, I mean, they're in a similar situation to us where they don't have additional capacity at this point. I mean, their programs are fully staffed. So then we started exploring partnerships with both the Allegan and Ottawa Conservation Districts. They are both partners on one of the grants already, the Trash Free Waters grant. And I guess we certainly, the MACC has had a history of subcontracting out technical services, specifically with the Allegan Conservation District, and doing some of the agricultural technical assistance. So there is a precedent for that. So we've just been having conversations to see, what their capacity is, if they are open and willing to doing this. And so we've had some initial conversations, Tyler and I have, with them, and both are open to the possibility. We certainly have some details we need to work out, and these new partnerships would require modifications of all of the grants. So we are kind of working through those issues currently, so we can redirect the funding from staffing into a sub-award agreement with each conservation district. So again, we still have some details to work out. They would have to sign sub-awards for each individual grant that they provide assistance with, and then we would also have an MOU that would outline roles and responsibilities. So there's quite a bit of paperwork that we have to figure out for this. But so at this point, I mean, we're anticipating that things might move relatively quickly as we get these grant modifications approved and work out the details with the Conservation District. So at this point, I mean, we can certainly take questions, but we are seeking a motion to approve the Executive Director, Tyler, to enter into contracts with either one or both of the conservation districts to provide these technical services, and pretty much specifically within the grants, and so using grant funding. So are there any questions before we kind of get to the motion?
Kelly, this is Linda. Would the outsourced services be 100% grant funded?
So the way that we've budgeted in the grant, the GLC grant, we have to provide a portion of that as match. So there's 10 hours a week essentially that were budgeted for Rob, 5 out of the grant, 5 out of match. So if we continue with that same level of service, we still have to meet that obligation for match. So the majority of the funding would come out of the grants, but we still have a match obligation to meet out of local funding.
So the net impact on the MACC is a net zero. We're not increasing our expenses by outsourcing it, correct?
Correct, right, because we would have spent the money regardless if we were paying a staff person or paying a subcontractor.
Great, thanks.
Other questions?
Bird moves the adoption of the motion as presented for authorizing Tyler.
Story seconds.
Who was second? Pardon?
Well, I did, but I thought maybe it was
Jim
maybe
Story?
Hodges. Yeah, Jim Story, but maybe
Okay.
Hodges saw it also too.
Okay.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item are grant applications. So I did want to provide a quick update on some previous grants that we had discussed. So there was a Midwest Glacial Lakes Partnership grant that we had applied for to support some of the work for the watershed management plan, specifically doing a geomorphic assessment. So we were not selected in that program. We did have a conversation with the grant manager and got some really good feedback. It was just highly competitive. They basically said we put together a really quality proposal, and it just came down to kind of splitting hairs on what their priorities were. So other applications were better aligned with their priorities. And then we still have a grant pending through the Michigan Coastal Management Program to support the watershed management plan. I think we had anticipated spring notifications on that with kind of a midsummer start date. So hopefully we'll hear something soon. We will be taking the tasks for the management plan and reapplying to an Eagle planning grant next month. So I will provide more information about that application at the next meeting. But so specific for this meeting, there's a couple grants that we've submitted recently, and I see that the date on this one is incorrect. So Eagle has a new program this year for watershed council support. It was submitted on February 18, so last week. And when we put the memo together and the PowerPoint slides, it didn't have all the details yet because I hadn't submitted the grant. But this was a grant in the amount of $39,950. And $35,000 of that is to support engineering for the Tulip Intercounty Drain Restoration Project. We had submitted, actually the Water Resources Commissioner had submitted an application to the 319 program to do the design and implementation of this project. So we basically took the engineering out of that, put it in this watershed council support grant, and the decisions will be made on both projects about the same time. So we're hoping that putting the funding in this grant might help increase our chances of getting the 319 funding. And we did have conversations with Eagle staff, and they thought that was a good approach. They recommended this as a priority for them to fund design work. And then we did include some funding for $4,950 to support staff time working toward the Sustainable Watershed Funding Initiative. So if this grant were funded, it would last for a year and probably start mid-summer. Any questions about this grant before I tell you about the next one? Okay. So then the other grant is a grant through the Michigan Clean Water Corps. They call it a maintenance grant, and that was submitted today, February 22nd. So this is to support the volunteer stream monitoring program that we've been doing since 2012 with the ODC network. So basically they are allowing maintenance grants to kind of replenish materials and supplies and support any staff time. So we are requesting funding primarily to purchase additional equipment, replace some old worn out equipment, and then a little bit for some staff time. So the total grant request was $1,876.25. And so $1,178.75 is for supplies, and then the balance would cover a portion of my time working on this to administer the grant, and then we will be hosting a fall volunteer event. And so ODC Network is also a partner in this. So they have pledged $250 in staff time as match to the grant. We've also pledged $232 in staff time, and then we will count the time of volunteers, about $730 of volunteer time as match. So this one we should hear about in a couple months, and then we have to have the project completed by the end of December. So it's a fairly quick turnaround and a quick project period, but important to help support the continued work of this program. Any questions about that grant?
Myers moves to approve.
Okay, thank you. So the motion, I'll just read it quickly, is to basically authorize the executive director, Tyler, to negotiate and sign grant agreements if awarded. And I think we've done this before, kind of both grants at once, or if you want to do one grant at a time, that's certainly up to you.
Well, this is Nienhuis. I'll second the motion of Honest.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Same sign, or opposed, same sign. All right, the motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the next agenda item is, there was not a memo for this. So this is just kind of a informational presentation to review the MS4 program and the MACC's role in assisting our local communities. So this is a little bit longer of a presentation, but I'm going to try to get it through it relatively quickly. So I wanted to just start with kind of the basics of, where this comes from. So at the federal level, the Clean Water Act includes the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which regulates point source pollution. And there are, within that definition, there are 3 types of stormwater that fall under the program and are regulated: industrial stormwater, construction site, and then municipal stormwater. And so within the program, a public entity that's located in an urbanized area that owns and operates a separate storm sewer system is required to have an NPDES permit to cover their stormwater discharge into waters of the state. And so the EPA divided this into 2 phases: phase 1, which really means large communities, and then phase 2. And then in the state of Michigan, it's the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy that administers this program. And so on the right-hand side there, you see the urbanized areas in the state of Michigan. So we do have 6 phase 1 communities. So you think Grand Rapids is 1, Detroit, so larger communities are those phase 1. And then I'm not sure how many phase 2 communities there are. There are a lot within those urbanized area. But the regulated area serves about 2/3 of Michigan's population. So certainly has an impact on a lot of people who also have a potential to impact the stormwater. So then looking a little bit closer at our local area. So the urbanized areas are defined by the census boundaries, but it's different than the transportation planning area. So for the transportation planning area, the census boundaries are smoothed. For the MS4 program, it's just those raw census boundaries. So this is what we're currently working within, and then as soon as we get updated census data, we're certainly anticipating some changes there, and we will adjust accordingly. So a little bit of the history of how the MACC got involved and is still involved in this. So the Stormwater Committee that we have currently first formed in 2001, and it was in response to the beginning of the MS4 program at the federal level, because 2003 was the first was when the first permit was issued. So our local communities came together and said, we want to work together, and came to the MACC and said, will you help us? And so that first permit, there was a process that permittees could go through to collaborate and apply for a watershed-based permit. So that's what our permittees did, as opposed to having individual permits. So essentially everybody had their own permit, but they were all pretty much the same. And then permits are good for 5 years. So then in 2008 was the next round of permits. And there were a lot of changes with that permit, and a lot of communities were not happy with those changes. So there were lawsuits that led to townships not needing to have permit coverage. So the townships then dropped out of the program, most townships, and then also our local townships left the Stormwater Committee at that time. And this is certainly all before I was at the MACC, so this is just my understanding. I don't know all the nuances there. But then fast forward to when I started in 2012, the next permit would have been due in 2013 with that every 5-year cycle. And the process changed again at that time to make the permits a little bit more customizable. That watershed-based permit was no longer available. There had to be an individual permit applied for, and they were going to stagger it around the state. So not everybody applied in the same year. So we did not have to apply for the Holland Zealand area until 2016. And so that timing allowed us to secure a grant in order to help support that, and which was greatly appreciated. We were able to hire a consultant to help with some pieces and then support staff time to do the rest. So then we submitted new permit applications in 2016 and then went through a couple years of revisions and submitted revised applications in 2019. And then just now in 2021, as of January 1st, the Ottawa County permit has been issued and is active. There are several others on public notice. So the City of Zeeland and Ottawa County Road Commission are on public notice currently. And I'm still working to connect with the City of Holland to schedule theirs for public notice. So just here's a quick summary of the MACC area permittees that we work with. So it's both counties, both road commissions, and then the 2 cities. So the MACC's role, I think since the beginning and kind of what I do now is at its basic is to work with the permittees to make sure they stay in compliance with their permits. And so this includes preparing and submitting those permit applications, which is certainly not a small feat. It's a pretty hefty application process. It is once every 5 years, and they are sticking with that original 5-year cycle. So the next applications will actually be due in 2023, even though our current permits haven't even been issued yet. So we will probably start working on those updates next year so we can be ready to submit applications in 2023. We also work with each permittee to prepare and submit their progress reports, which are due every 2 years. So I basically send out a questionnaire to everybody and to find out what activities have happened. And it's again, a fairly substantial questionnaire. And then I compile the responses and submit the report for everyone. Everyone has to submit their own. It's 6 different reports, not just one. And then we do continue to keep that committee active, and we host quarterly meetings with everyone to discuss implementation activities, any concerns that they have, and any future things we should be thinking about. So I do want to run through the requirements relatively quickly here. So at its heart, the goals of the program are to reduce quantity of stormwater discharge and ensure that only clean stormwater is discharged. And so in order to do that, there are these 7 minimum measures required under the permit and what they call a stormwater management program. So that is what we work with the permittees to develop their programs and make sure they stay in compliance with them. So I'm going to run through all 7 of these really quickly here. So public participation and public education, we kind of lump together as one, and we have one plan. I mentioned that the permits are individual, but this is one area where permittees can work collaboratively. So we have one public participation, public education plan that all 6 of them use. We don't have 6 different plans. So participation is really just making sure that there's an opportunity for the public to review and comment on the stormwater management program. And so we're handling that pretty much through websites. Make sure it's posted on your website and that there's a way for people to comment. And then within public education, there are 10 very specific educational topics that we need to hit with our public education strategy. You can prioritize those. So we go through a process working with stakeholders to prioritize those messages. And then we have to identify our audience's messages, delivery mechanisms, the year we're going to deliver those and at what frequency, and then who's responsible for those. And then we do have to have a process for evaluating the effectiveness of our public education. So the MACC maintains the plan, and we do the majority of the implementation on behalf of the permittees. There are certainly some additional things that each permittee does, like for instance, the Ottawa County Road Commission I know has gone out with Boy Scout groups and put the markers on storm drains. So there are certainly activities that they do on their own, but we do the majority for their permit compliance. And then with Ottawa County and the Ottawa County Road Commission, because they have urbanized areas in other parts of the county outside of the Macatawa watershed, they also participate with Elgro in the Lower Grand with their public education program. So next is the illicit discharge elimination. And this is another area where they can work collaboratively. So Allegan County and the Allegan County Road Commission have chosen to do that. So they just have one plan for the two of them. So and then I only have to maintain 5 plans instead of 6. But so this has to do with inspecting their stormwater outfalls. So anywhere where the end of pipe from their system is discharging into a lake or stream. So they have to have a procedure for how they're going to conduct inspections during dry weather. And if they find illicit discharges, how are they going to investigate to determine the source of that? They have to have procedures for responding to complaints about spills or illegal dumping. They have to have methods in place for tracking all of this work and complaints all the way through to resolution. There is a requirement for employee training and how to do the inspections and investigations. There's a requirement to evaluate the program effectiveness, which is pretty consistent for all of the components. And then there also is a requirement to have a mechanism in place, like an ordinance, to prohibit and enforce the elimination of illicit discharges. So the MACC maintains the plans and all the inspection forms that are needed for this. We do conduct the employee training, and then sometimes we assist with the field work. For the most part, everybody does their own screenings and investigations, but just depending on the timing and the need, I certainly have been out to investigate complaints before or do some dry weather screenings. So then the construction stormwater runoff control. This is essentially the soil erosion and sediment control, part 91. So there's really not a whole lot more required within the MS4 permit. We just have to make sure the procedures are outlined and that they're specific to violations or complaints of any materials that would be polluting stormwater. And then making sure that there's that requirement of obtaining the Part 91 permit. So there really isn't a whole lot that the MACC does with this other than making sure that their procedures are in place and that the violations and complaints are being documented. So on post-construction, this is stormwater discharges after a site has been constructed. So the goal here is we want to try to maintain or restore the stable hydrology in the receiving waters. And so all new proposed developments that have to go through site plan review must meet a water quality and channel protection performance standard. And in the permit, there are numeric requirements for those. And then the permit goes on to require some other details for specific parts of programs, like if offsite mitigation or payment in lieu is allowed, then there are some specific requirements that communities have to meet. The permit requires that long-term maintenance of private stormwater systems occurs and that there's a mechanism to require and enforce conformance with the standards, including the maintenance, long-term maintenance. So this is handled a little bit differently with the county and cities as opposed to the road commissions. Since the county and the cities have some decision-making authority over development reviews, they do have their own sets of rules and standards that developers follow. And then the county and city has to make sure that those are being complied with. For the road commissions, their responsibility is to make sure that they're following these standards on their own projects. So what the MACC does in relation to this is we primarily coordinate with a consultant when updates are needed. This is a very highly technical engineered document. So this was one that the SAW grant enabled us to hire a consultant to make the necessary updates. But then we review all the documents and make sure they comply with the permit. We do maintain a model stormwater ordinance for communities to use. And then we have been assisting as necessary with education to the developers and design engineers to make sure that they understand what these rules are and how to apply them. And then also working with the local communities on making sure these rules and the enforcement is adopted. Okay, we're almost to the end. So pollution prevention and good housekeeping. This is essentially how facilities are being managed and making sure that best practices are being used to prevent stormwater pollution. And so the permit requires that you have an inventory of all your facilities, and this includes property that is owned by the entity, and then also all the stormwater controls. And so that could include controls outside of properties, but in right-of-ways. And then beyond the facility inventory, also the activities that occur at each facility that have the potential to generate pollution. And there are certain ones that the permit is more concerned about, like fuel storage, vehicles, salt storage, so kind of chemicals that could have the potential to cause stormwater pollution. So we take that inventory, and then there's a requirement that BMPs or standard operating procedures be developed and followed to prevent stormwater pollution. And then there are some specific requirements to inspect and maintain catch basins. So this is everywhere within the city or county right away. And then also to do street sweeping for entities that are actively participating in street sweeping. There is some requirement for employee training to make sure that employees understand the BMPs and how to apply them. So the MACC has a pretty active role in this, where we conducted and maintain all of the inventories. So anytime property changes, a new facility is constructed, we have to go do that inventory and update the plan. We've developed the best management practices and all the inspection forms that are required with this. We maintain the handbook, so everybody has their own handbook, and then we provide the employee training. So then the last piece of it is the TMDL, the total maximum daily load implementation. So this is only for permittees that have a TMDL within their service area. So certainly Lake Macatawa has a TMDL. And then with Ottawa County, there are some other water bodies, Bass River and Sand Creek have TMDLs. So we have to account for all of those within the permit and make sure that each permittee is identifying and prioritizing and using BMPs that are specific to those TMDLs. So it may be they have to do something above and beyond just the standard in order to address phosphorus, to address sediment, to address E. coli. And then there is a requirement for actual water quality monitoring to determine the effectiveness of the BMPs that they're using. So essentially the primary function of the watershed project is to maintain the TMDL implementation plan. That's our watershed management plan. So we've already gone through that process of identifying, prioritizing BMPs. So then we just make sure that each permittee is following those, and then we will coordinate to make sure that additional water quality monitoring is conducted as required. All right, I think that was my last slide. So I know that's a lot of information that I kind of went through quickly, but I would be happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Any questions for Kelly? Kelly, I want to thank you for that presentation. I know that a lot of your work is dedicated with working with the local organizations on implementation of those plans, and there's going to be continued conversations going forward with the ordinances and such. So Kelly's working with many of the staff members from your organizations to see that through. So Kelly, thank you for your efforts and seeing that the MS4 program for the MACC area. Next on the agenda is the transportation programming. There are a couple of memos included in your packets there. The first is the adjustment for the 4-year bridge condition targets. This is a federal performance measure requirement that MDOT has established bridge conditions for targets in 2018. In 2018, both the tech committee and the policy committee or policy board elected to support those targets. It is now the midpoint of the review of those targets, and in which the state is looking to make adjustments, another 4-year adjustment to those based on the updated information from MDOT. Tyler, do you have anything you'd like to add with regard to the findings of MDOT on that?
I can. Thank you, Tyler. Hey, everybody. Everybody can hear me, right? I've been having microphone issues. Okay, good. Thank goodness. There's a couple of things on there. Back when the last federal reauthorization package was passed in 2015, there were various performance measures that all recipients of federal aid, transportation federal aid, were required to meet. Bridge condition is one of those. That's part of those performance measures. That was first implemented in 2018. All the MPOs could elect to develop their own or support the state targets. I think at this point, all the MPOs in the state have just supported the state targets. These performance periods are 4 years in length. For some, I shouldn't say all performance measures, but for bridges, they're 4 years. We started in 2018. That's the other Tyler mentioned, the MACC supported the state targets. Over the last 2 years, we've monitored the bridges on our trunk line and other federal aid local roads. And we adjusted the targets just a little bit to account for some of the changes in deterioration on some of the bigger bridges in the state, which do have a factor on the average, the statewide average. There was a question at the technical meeting about our condition compared to other areas. I'm not sure about other states in the union, but I do know as compared to the state of Michigan, the MACC is doing quite well in bridge condition compared to other areas of the state. So just wanted to provide that piece of information. This does not necessarily reflect conditions in the MACC, it's a statewide average. What we have before you today is just the MPO consideration of adopting the revised targets for the first performance period, which ends on September 30th of 2022. Federal agencies allow the department to modify these during the mid-year performance period, which was last year. So that's where those numbers come from. I'll take any questions if anybody has any regarding these, or just the the topic in general.
Any questions for either of the Tylers? All right, just to let everyone know, the technical committee made a recommendation to the policy board to approve the conditions as presented. Is there a motion to approve those conditional?
Bird moves the motion.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Nienhuis supports it.
All right.
Gary, okay.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, all in favor, thank you. And then secondly on the agenda for under transportation is TIP amendments for the 2023 years. There are a few of those, one being the M40 project, which is adding a center lane with a left center turn lane, which includes a traffic light. And there are a couple of projects that are looking to be abandoned for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as a couple of MACC transit amendments, which reflect the 80-20 split, which was originally programmed at 75-25. And then it looks like there were 2 projects, CSX transportation jobs in the Zealand area, which included some PE phasing and a new estimated cost for one of those projects. Tyler, is there anything else that you would like to add with regard to that?
No, you did a good job. The M40 project, that is mostly outside of the MAC MPO area, but since it touches the boundary, the current requirements are that it requires an MPO review. So that's what's before you today. In addition, the CSX railroad work is being administered by MDOT. That's not unusual, that happens. And then the two abandoned jobs are region-wide projects. Technically, they're statewide, but they're region-wide. It's not being abandoned for the MPO, it's being abandoned statewide, and it's most likely reprogrammed and repackaged for 2022. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve those amendments?
Honest, so moves.
Anna?
Support.
Who was the second?
Klein
Don?
Hetzel.
Thank you.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, the motion is approved. Thank you. Next on the agenda, under administrative issues, financial report. Unfortunately, a copy of financial report wasn't included
Tyler?
in the packet. Oh,
Aye.
yes.
Well, were we going to offer if there was any MDOT or?
Oh, sorry,
FHA
Tyler. Sorry, Don.
That's good enough for me already. No. Just a couple of quick updates for the good of the group. MDOT staff just earlier this month were required to work from home through at least May 1st to this point due to the ongoing pandemic. I'll keep this committee aware of what things are, if that gets extended again or not. Also wanted to point out that the state long-range plan, it's kind of a similar effort to what the MPO did about a year ago. Is still being in its draft development phase. Maybe around the spring or early summer, we'll have a draft plan available for public comment. I'll make sure that that information gets out to this group when that becomes available. And very unique to this area, and very unique for the time too. The Rebuilding Michigan Bonding Program. This area utilizes a couple projects using those funds. West on I-196, basically southwest of Holland, will be utilizing that. The first round of lettings happened earlier this month, and there's also another round of lettings for I-196 between US 31 and M40 on the south side of Holland. So definitely a lot of action coming up in the next couple of years. We did talk with MACC Tyler about possibly talking about all the big projects in the area at the March meeting, if there's time. I think it'd be helpful to kind of talk about everything that's going on here, just kind of moving forward. So maybe look for that at the next month's meeting or sometime soon thereafter. Aside from that, I don't know, Don, if you have any other updates you want to provide. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler.
Don't really have anything to add at this time.
Don, can you let everyone know of your new role with MDOT, or is that?
Oh yeah, I did. I assume that people know that Eric Mullen moved into a division administrator position, which vacated the section for statewide planning, section manager, and I did get the section manager position. So I will be backfilling the West Unit supervisor position as soon as we can, and that'll be your new policy committee person once that happens. Until then, I'll still be here.
Well, thanks, Don, and we appreciate all of your support and guidance serving as a rep for MDOT for the policy board.
Thank you.
And good luck with the new position. Hope we're still able to see you around.
Yeah, I'm still in the statewide planning section, so
okay, perfect.
You'll be dealing with me.
Well, good.
Thanks.
Thank you. All righty. Next on the agenda, administrative issues. A copy of the financial report wasn't included in the agenda. I will send that out tomorrow. Unfortunately, the day which Chris is in the office, the roadways were bad, so he wasn't able to get in on Tuesday of last week. So I'll get that information sent out to you later this week. Under the MACC executive reports, a couple of here I'd like to report on. First and foremost, we have filled the transportation planning position. That individual will be starting the week of March 8th. So we're happy to have Anton come on board. So he'll be at the next policy board meeting. PASER ratings. We've reached out to the local with regard to ratings. Because of the complexity of COVID and its rules, I've reached out to GVMC and Windsor-Dick to see if either one of those organizations would be interested in conducting the PASER studies for the MACC. Because of the requirements of separation and such within a vehicle and limited staffing, it would be probably detrimental to the organization to have 2 full-time people from the MACC office out conducting those inspections. So we're working with GVMC. They're going to give us a cost estimate to do those ratings this year. So we hope to be able to partner with them on doing those ratings, and hopefully it's a cost benefit to the MACC area, as well as they've got a van that's well equipped and it's separated on the inside for 2 individuals to do those ratings. So we hope to be able to partner with them in those reviews of the roadways. We just recently learned too that the MACC area will be receiving $677,377 in HIT COVID relief funds. Those funds are to be spent down by, I believe it's 2024. So I'll be working with the technical committee on figuring out which projects we want to fund using those dollars. And then we'll be reporting back with the decisions, hopefully within the next couple of months, of how those dollars are going to be spent. Any questions with regard to any of that information? All right, and I have, just to let everyone know, you know, it was a high priority for the strategic plan to address the watershed budget and it being in red. So I'm reviewing that now. I have a meeting tomorrow with Chris Brown, Kelly, to discuss the future of the watershed. I've had discussions with Travis Williams and David Knight are from ODC with regard to that as well, and seeing what partnerships can come from that. I mean, we've got a very strong relationship now, but we'd like to continue to build on that. So, you know, it's assessing what we're currently staffed at and where we need to go in the future based off of grants and those types of things. So, you know, as Kelly had indicated, we're looking to possibly partner or, you know, do some contracts with the conservation districts to cover some of that work that Rob was going to do with those grants. So at this point, I don't feel as though there's a need to fill that ag tech position at this point. And those conversations will continue with Outdoor Discovery to see what their needs are and what our needs are. So with that, that is my report with regard to kind of where we're at and where we're going to be moving forward. I don't think Tom is here today to share what's going on within the Zeeland Township. Is there any comments, questions from members, any of the members? All right. Well, I appreciate everyone's attendance today and everyone's support. The next meeting will be on March 22nd of 2021. Is there a motion to close up the meeting today?
Moved by Box.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
Second.
Linda?
Thank you, Linda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a great week.